Sentire Media.
Well, hello there, and welcome back to another episode of A New Life in Italy, the podcast that gives you the real scoop on everything you need to know about living, thriving, and creating a life in Italy. I'm your host, Samantha Wilson, and today's episode is going to be a fun one, but it's also one that might hit a little bit close to home for a lot of you. We're going to be talking about big dreams. You know, the kinds that make your heart race just a little bit, or maybe make your friends and your family raise an eyebrow or two. Now, let me ask you this. Have you ever had a dream so bold, so seemingly impossible that you weren't sure where to even start? Maybe it's packing up your life and moving to a little village in Italy, opening a cozy inn, or learning how to cook Italian food like a pro. Maybe it's something completely different. Whatever it is, that dream is probably sitting in the back of your mind, just waiting for you to take a leap. But here's the thing about dreams. They're not always neat and tidy, and they don't come with a detailed instruction manual, and sometimes they seem downright crazy. Now, today we're diving into why following your dreams, no matter how risky or unconventional they might feel, is worth it. And I have the perfect guest to help us explore this. Her name is Ashley Bartner, and her husband, Jason, moved to Italy 17 years ago with this great big dream and not much of a plan. And they left behind their lives in New York and built this incredible life, running an organic farm, an inn, and a cooking school in the countryside of Le Marche. And it's a story full of challenges and triumphs and moments that will make you laugh and maybe even inspire you to take your own leap of faith. So, if you have ever wondered what it's like to trade the expected for the extraordinary, to follow your dream that makes people say, hey, are you sure about this? Then stick around, because this episode is all about jumping into the unknown, learning as you go, and discovering what happens when you bet on yourself. Are you ready? Let's get started. I'm Samantha Wilson, Chief Dream Maker at smartmoveitaly.com, and this is A New Life in Italy, a show where each week I take you behind the scenes of what it's really like to move to Italy, introduce you to some fascinating people, answer your questions, and show you how starting a new life in Bel Paese is possible for you. Okay, so let's talk about dreams for a minute. We all have them, right? But there's this funny thing about big dreams. They often come with this healthy side dish of doubt. And it's not just your own doubt. Oh, no. There are always that, chorus of friends and family and coworkers that like to chime in with questions like, are you sure that's a good idea? Or, but what is your plan? Now, the truth is that you don't always need a perfect plan to get started. Now, don't get me wrong, because I like plans. And I'm not saying that you should just throw caution to the wind and book a one-way ticket without doing any prep work. But sometimes waiting until absolutely everything is perfectly lined up can mean that you actually never get started in the first place. And life doesn't work like a Pinterest board or Instagram. It's kind of messy and it's unpredictable. And often the best moments come from just going for it. Now, moving to Italy, this is a dream that I hear about all the time. And let me tell you, it is not as impossible as sometimes it might feel. Now, sure, there are logistics and visas and language barriers and figuring out how to order coffee or not making yourself, feel like an idiot as you're getting through your new life here. But what stops most people isn't really the paperwork or those hurdles. It's fear of failure. Fear of what other people might think, fear of stepping outside of your comfort zone. And moving to Italy will push your limits, and it's going to force you outside of that zone. And that's why stories like Ashley's are so important. She didn't just dream about a life in Italy, she actually did it. Her and her husband left everything behind. They left their jobs, a predictable income, all of it, to start a new life that was totally different for them. And back then it was even harder than it is now. And guess what? They didn't have all the answers when they started, but they figured it out as they went along. And 17 years later, 17, they're still living their dream in this organic farm. It's called La Tavola Marche in Le Marche. Now, what I love about Ashley's story is that it's not just about escaping to Italy. It's about building something meaningful, running a farm, hosting guests, teaching cooking classes. And that's not easy work. They work a long, long day, a lot of hours. But it's work that matters, work that fulfills her. And isn't that what we all want? So if you have a big dream, even if it feels just a tiny bit crazy, this episode is your reminder that you don't have to have all the answers right now. You just have to have a start. And who knows, your version of crazy just might turn into the best decision that you ever made. Okay, let's get into this. I want to introduce you to Ashley Bartner. She's the co-founder of La Tavola Marche. It's this gorgeous agriturismo and cooking school that's just nestled. It's kind of a little bit remote, but it's nestled in the countryside in Le Marche. Now, along with her husband, Jason, she has built a life that is all about celebrating food because he is a professional chef. And so they focus on food, of course, sustainability, and the community. They wrangle these free-range chickens. They have some animals. They've got great stories on that. And they host these unforgettable farm-to-table dinners. Ashley has seen and she has done it all. All right, Ashley, welcome to the show. I am so happy to talk to you today. Now, for Ashley, for people who, I mean, you know, a lot of people know who you are already, but for those of you listeners out there who do not know who Ashley and her husband, Jason, are, just Ashley's with us today. Tell us a little bit about who you are and, you know, a Cole's Notes version, because I know you've been here for 17 years?
Yeah, gosh, going on 18 or more, starting to lose track after this point. My husband and I, in 2007, in the winter of 2007, moved to Italy and started a farm inn and cooking school called La Tavola Marche. And we've been at our sweet little slice of paradise here down a long dirt road, learning to farm from the locals. We had no idea what we were doing when we came. We were 25 and just ready to learn from the locals and learn the Italian way to do everything. So we were young and hungry and curious. And after all these years, it's paid off now. Now we finally know what we're doing, but we still have a lot of questions along the way, even all these years in. We're lucky with our neighbors.
I mean, you're totally living, you know, the dream with all the books and all the movies. And, you know, because even 17 years ago, it's a lot different when you moved, you know, 17 years ago to what it would be like now, I'm sure, for people.
Oh my gosh. So much has changed in that amount of time, from anyone even knowing where La Marche was, on a small scale like that. Even Italians would be like, where? But to then the grocery stores and what's available in the grocery stores, to the cost of living, to now we're Italian citizens. But so many things have changed in those years for sure. It's been kind of interesting to be part of it at also a great time, because when we moved, we were so young. So the Italians all thought we must be like orphans. Like, where are your parents? It was hilarious. And we were like, no. And their kids or grandkids who might have been around our age had no interest in learning some of these old ways, old recipes, traditional, things of country living. And so we were just a sponge ready to soak it all up. And they were just so excited to share it with anyone willing to listen, to make sure these things didn't die. And so we came at such a great time for that. As sad as that is for the Italians leaving, it was a great time for us to kind of inherit and adopt all these kind of, I affectionately call them all the oldies. I was told last night that's not a very nice word. And I was like, I felt like elderly sounded worse. He was like, no, we were talking about what to say. Someone was, vecchie, anziani, or just grande. And we settled on grande. But,
so you and Jason are running an agriturismo, and you open it. So, I mean, most people, well, maybe not. Maybe you can explain what an agriturismo is.
An agriturismo was created in the 80s. as a way to help supplement farmers. And so the idea was these farmers had these big farmhouses, and now they weren't filled the same way they used to with the workers. And so they had rooms that they could rent out to help supplement the, you know,
Mhm.
cost of doing the fields and the feed and all of that. And so the idea now, as it's kind of modernized, is to really help support the farmer and to keep the farmlands going as well.
Right.
But the idea is at least 80% of what you would serve to your guests would come from your land or from right there of, which
Mm.
is almost impossible not to where we live. There's there's no, it's just all right here all the time. And then you can do things interactive with your guests with the farm. And also you get, there's special tax benefits. Different regions, I know a lot of people who listen to the podcast are thinking about moving to Italy, possibly. And the depends on the region you're in for a lot of the um regulations and stipulations to become an agriturismo. But in our region, I think you just needed 4 hectares of land, and but it needed to be farmed or worked and all of that. So there's a lot of regulation on what you're doing with the land and to make sure it's being maintained in the purpose it was for pastures or for woodlands or whatever it may be. So that is kind of what an agriturismo is. So normally a working farm, one way or another, with rooms where you stay at the farm and hopefully participate in a bit of farm life while you're there.
Right. And that's exactly what you do, right? And that's what the guests,
Exactly.
yeah,
They
experience when
get
they
there.
come.
We say if you're willing to muddy your feet, it will guide you off the beaten path. And we're not joking. We have wellies in all sizes. You're going to get your feet dirty out here. So,
Well, I think that's what, what you're doing, I think, is the dream of many people. A lot of people obviously can't end up doing it, or when they find out how hard it really is, they change their minds. They don't last certainly 17 years digging around and building this business that you have that is so amazing, because it's not just an agriturismo, it's also a cooking school, right? I mean, that's what you focus on.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's all, I mean, as cheesy as is to say farm to table, it truly is. The cooking classes begin down in the garden. If it's too hot of a day, Jason goes down and picks everything for them, and then they can do a little walk around. But in
Yeah,
the
he
summer,
does.
it gets pretty hot. But
Yeah.
so yeah, it's all we grow or raise, damn near everything. And even the flour the is from the fields surrounding the house and milled in the town we're in with like a born on date of just a couple days before. So like the pasta with the eggs from the hens and the flour right there, it's just you can't get any more 0 kilometer than that. So it's fun to share that part with the guests of the real seasonal life out here and how the table changes that way. But then also with the cooking classes, we'll also do not so much food tours like in the classic sense, but we'll do like a market tour, but it's all behind the scenes since we call it feel like a local because we've been here so long and they've adopted us that we can really take people behind the scenes of places and, into the kitchen at the restaurant or into where they butcher the meat at the restaurant or how show them how they really cure the meats and cheeses in our area and get to sample a bit of that. So it's fun for us also to then get the guests out of the house and connect with the locals in different ways like that. And since since I married a chef,
Yeah.
for us, it's all about the food. So the
Yeah.
best way to kind of connect to a different area and to the locals is through the food. So that's
Right.
what we love to do.
And I know that you guys do all of that too, because you cure your own meat. And I know that I
Yes.
remember because of course your podcast is also on Sentiti Media. So I listen to it. I
Yes.
love it, by the way. It's one of my favorites. And you had that one episode where I know that you raised pigs and then you were,
Hmm.
with all the meat. And that's, if you haven't listened to this podcast, go on to Sentiti Media and listen to it because it is just hilarious. And I know that, my biggest question, because you guys do everything, not just run an agritourismo and a cooking school, but you actually are farming the land. I know that Jason's got this huge garden and you're, you have these animals and these chickens. I mean, what time do you wake up in the morning? What is your
So in
day?
in the summer, Jason is starting to wake up around 4:30, even in the winter. I tried to in the winter, I'm like, Let's try to do it closer to like 5:30. So 5:30 in the winter is normally when we start getting up. In the summer, it's like really 5-ish.
Mhm.
Also because it gets there's so much to get done in
Right? I
the
can
day.
imagine.
From, doing the chickens, now we have 2 dogs and taking them for a walk in the morning and getting, all the other animals fed, and I'm staying
Yeah.
home if we have guests because then I'm doing breakfast and getting that all
Right.
set up, and then we've gotta get home he's gotta get home from doing all the animal stuff and either get down to the garden and do whatever needs to be done down there before it gets hot, or if there's like a cooking class that starts at 10 in the morning or a lunch, then he's got to get to the market for anything else like bread or
Yeah.
some other meat or something and get back. And then we always, no matter what time we wake up or go to bed, the one thing that is like sacrament in the house is the midday nap. Because
Oh,
especially when you're running hard with guests and you've got long days and long nights, you've gotta take that nap in the middle of the day. So
you
even if we
do.
are packed with people, it's like, "Peace out. We gotta get like,
Wow,
you won't
that
see
is
us for."
discipline. That is discipline to
Mhm.
do well, I don't know, maybe you just crash. Who knows? I think
You do. Even if it's
yeah,
the 20-minute, like, power nap, you've gotta just take that time to get away,
yeah.
relax for a few, and then get back to it. Because then yeah, there's so much more to do in the afternoon and evening, and it's just the 2 of us. We do
I
have
was yeah,
after all these years, it's taken forever because 'cause we're so remote to find, any help for, like, cleaning ladies or anyone to
right.
help even just come and mow the lawn around the house. Because the house Jason's garden, when you say massive garden, you are not wrong. It's, like, over an acre itself of
Ah,
garden,
does he just
plus.
keep building on it, or is it
Yes,
or
which is
yeah, so
insane.
it
Like,
doesn't
him
stop.
or Gaji will be like, "I think we should extend it," and I'm like, "What is going on? Who are we feeding?" And we just give a ton of it away, and
Yeah.
Gaji, our adopted Italian papa, calls it public relations.
Oh, no.
Um, but but it's also you sleep really well, you feel fulfilled because you got a bunch done.
Yeah,
The hard part is in the heat of summer, you actually don't get that much done. You have to get up and get things done early, but then you kind of hibernate in the middle of the
yeah,
day of the heat.
of course, yeah, you
So
can't do
you
anything.
we always are over optimistic of like, oh, we're gonna build, he built a frame of a barn, but like, look at the sides on and some stalls. And then it's like, are you kidding? We're not going down in the heat and doing that project. So the spring becomes the time to get as many of those kind of big projects done as possible.
Right. So obviously, I mean, life on the farm is it's clearly a lot of work, and then you layered on top of it the guests and the agritourism and the cooking school. But I mean, I know that there's challenges, but can you think of something? Because I know we've talked it before, and there's always something funny stories that all of those things that are happening around you. What's the most kind of unexpected or crazy thing that's happened during your time there? Like what's the first thing that comes to mind?
One of the first things that comes to mind is a great story, especially because it's the holidays. Is we had a guest who was here. She'd been here multiple times and she'd booked out the farmhouse for just her and her husband for an anniversary.
Mhm.
And we were going to do some special stuff since they had been here so many times of her husband was going to go hunting with Gaji in the morning. Not like he couldn't shoot the gun, but like
Yeah.
they were Texans and go
Okay.
out and go, shadow him hunting and do some of this stuff and some real like backwoods kind of
Yeah.
holiday, which is so hilarious. These like rich Texans, that's what they want to do for their anniversary. All
Right.
right, we'll show it to you. Um,
That's right.
so
Here's the boots.
then they really got a dose of it because we said, listen, we can either do like a cooking class, a regular cooking class, but you've done so many things. What about if we change the date and make our Thanksgiving lunch for all of our neighbors
Yeah.
while you're here, and you guys help us, the two of you help us prepare the Thanksgiving. And
Hmm.
she was like, oh my God, perfect. And so we spent, 2 days making cappelletti and doing this mix of it. Kind of, you've got to still do pasta because it's Italy. We've
Yeah.
learned the first year
Right.
we didn't have pasta. They were like, what kind of
Leave.
pasta
Yeah.
is this?
Leave
Like,
the village.
yes. So we had done all this stuff. And the next morning, we were checking off the list and, we're getting everything done. We need to make tiramisu and like the turkey's in. And because the turkey, it's so hard to find a turkey in Italy
Right.
anyway, and all of that. So, anyway, we're looking great. And we're going to have like 22 people come for lunch of all locals. That is truly like Thanksgiving, where we thank them for all the help they have given us throughout the year,
Right.
of like using the tractor, or coming in them, doing our turning the soil if when we haven't had a tractor,
Yeah.
um, helping in all
Nice.
these different ways. So it's really nice.
Mhm.
Well, people were supposed to start showing up. It's classic. So lunch is going to be at like noonish.
Okay.
12:30. These are a lot of the oldies. So a little
Okay.
earlier in the countryside out here. And of course, Italians start showing up early because it's an agriturismo, a country location where they're like, we'll take a walk or a
Walk and
stroll
yeah.
before lunch. So people normally start arriving around almost 11 for these lunches, and classically stay like 6 hours. So
Yeah.
anyway, we're looking great in the morning, and all of a sudden, 9 o'clock, power goes out.
Oh,
And it was
no.
like, this has never happened. We may be way out here in the middle of nowhere, but we have never had a problem with the power.
Yeah.
Come to find out, it was hunting season, and there was a drunk hunter who shot a bird on a power line and shot the
No.
power line. And so we were just like, oh my gosh, how are we going to do this? Because it means now we're lucky because we do have a lot of bathrooms. There's no guests. We're closed.
Okay.
We don't have any other guests except for those two.
Yeah.
And so we can open up all the apartments, but that means there's still like 7 bathrooms. So only 7 real flushes. All the men are going to have to pee outside. These are country guys. They don't really care. We have no water because there's no pump, because the pump is powered by the electricity.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this super fancy doctor who was here became like the dish boy. Him and Jason had gone to town to where there's a natural spring coming off the mountain and filled up all these jugs of water, brought it back, and he was like trying to just jug clean some dishes on the
Oh,
side.
I love
It
it.
was in the sink the whole time. And we had candles going up the stairs and all of this. And we had to figure out where the hell we were putting the turkey, because not only is a turkey hard to find, but part of probably why it's hard to find is no one has an oven to
Big
fit
enough.
a turkey, a
Yeah.
huge American sized turkey. So then we had to find someone with a big enough oven, take the bird there and hope they didn't just don't touch it. We got to get this thing in the oven. But then, of course, it just turned into a great story. And then the NL, the electric company, showed up and hooked up this diesel generator that was chugging away at the top of our driveway to feed the house, which was hilarious. Here's our like sweet little organic farm out in the middle of nowhere and
With this
pristine countryside with this chugga chugga chugga
huge thing.
chugga.
Well,
And
that
so the
Enel came
power,
out. It was
and
something else too.
I know. Well, then the power came back on in the middle of lunch, and everyone said, keep the lights off, like keep it all shut. This is perfect. So it ended
Oh,
up to be a great story and a
oh,
sense of
awesome.
community and all of that. And just kind of like you can try your best to plan
Yeah.
for something in Italy, and it'll always end up throwing a
Always go the
wrench in
other
your
way.
plan. Yes. So
Always.
you have to be ready for anything and always be ready to problem solve out here.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm sure you have a gazillion of those kinds of stories with all the people. I mean, how many people do you know even how many guests you've had through
Oh my
your
gosh, the
doors over
best
the
way,
years?
we kind of joke like our butcher would know, but also really the where we get our aprons. How many aprons I order a year
Oh,
would be how
yeah.
many people take cooking classes, and all basically everyone, 99.9% of the guests take a cooking class.
Right.
So I would say probably in the last about 150 to 200 guests a year.
Yeah.
Um
Oh, that's a lot of people, though. That's a lot
Yeah.
of guests to go
And
through.
we are open from like, it depends on the year. This year we're opening early. A guest who's been here before is coming back and taking over the farmhouse with a group of her girlfriends. And so we'll open in kind of mid-April this year, but normally towards the end of May to early November. So in about 6 months
6-month time
time.
frame.
hmm
Yeah. Well,
So yeah,
because
I'd say about 150. So the certain years we used to be really crazy when we were just really trying to run so hard.
right.
And so I would say 200 or even more certain years of that. But then after COVID, kind of made us realize, we didn't have guests for a whole year. We didn't know what was going on. Then the second year, we didn't find out until June that if we could even have guests, which is late
Mhm.
for people traveling internationally, and the rules were also crazy. So it kind of just made us realize we're running so hard and working so hard at a house that we don't get to enjoy. Now we had to
Yeah.
like earn our chops for sure, and you
Yeah.
have to hustle for years.
Right, because it's a business. Yeah,
It's
you
because
have
it's
to
a
go, but
business. But then at a certain point, you start to become Italian and
yeah.
you go, what are we doing this for? Like, we need to enjoy where we are. And so now we have a lot less kind of bookings throughout the year, but it means that we can, like, we were never able to jar things we would jar the tomatoes and like wrangle in guests to help us do things like that.
Yeah.
And we would do sometimes the workshops on preserving and canning, but, we would miss out on doing a lot of different jarring and things because we would just be so busy with guests that it was just like we have no time to get to that. The
Yeah, it's
tomatoes were
easy
always
yeah, it's easy to find yourself forgetting the reason you came in the first place.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So
Yeah.
that's been nice and kind of finding that balance.
Yeah. And so now you're closed, obviously, because it's winter
Yep.
time. So tell me about your holidays. What are you doing this Christmas?
Well, this Christmas, we will, for Christmas Eve, have our adopted Italian parents here. We just affectionately call them that. They're a sweet local couple who don't have kids of their own and have really just adopted us.
Yeah.
And we do holidays and just random Tuesday or Wednesdays with them. And he comes over and helps with the garden. And Jason and
Yeah.
him will get into fights and yell at each other like family. And his and his wife, it reminds me of Jason's grandma so much. And so there's just this nice
It's family,
rapport
yeah.
with them. So they'll come over here for Christmas Eve, and then we'll go the last few years we go to the Rosanna, his wife's family's place for Christmas Day.
Mhm.
And so a nice little mix. But I was able to go back to the States for Thanksgiving this year to
Oh, do you
see
go back often?
family.
Do you go back very
No,
often?
but when there's two new babies in the family. So
Oh,
it was time to go back to see the babies at like
yeah.
6 and 9 months old. And then because
Nice.
of the babies, more family flew in from Australia, and then because we had now Italy and Australia back, family came up from Mexico and
Oh,
from Las Vegas up to Seattle, and then even from Oklahoma flew out. So it was a big family reunion. It was great.
oh, good. That's so nice.
Yeah,
I
it's
think
fun to switch it up and just kind of get to. That's the one thing I really miss is those kind of holidays and family
yeah,
time.
yeah.
But you know, then they've also
Uh,
all come out here and have been able to have great memories of
yeah,
them in
I
Italy.
I think that often. I think that, when you first come out, I mean, it's been a long time, but you worry that you're not going to see anybody again, and then you realize you had more friends and you realize all of a
Mhm.
sudden they're showing up on your door and you didn't realize they were your friends in the first place. It's amazing how Italy will draw them all in.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
sure that you
Have
see
a
them all the
plan.
time. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so you're closed now. You're open in April, and I mean, I want to talk to you a bit because we talked about before we started here. We talked about the winter because I was complaining, as I always do, about being cold before we started recording. And tell me about what it's like out in the farm there. Do you close up half of like all of the rooms and then just to keep a few rooms warm? Because I know what it's like. It's tough in those,
Exactly. So
farmhouses.
that's the thing too. When people thinking about moving to Italy and thinking about like the square footage of a house, and I know especially out in like looking at properties in La Marche and Umbria and stuff, sometimes you'll see places that are much bigger and they seem to be such a much better price. And you're like, wow, look how many rooms we can rent out or these things. Well, you not only have to pay for the electricity and the square meters and tax for all of that, but to heat it is insane.
Yeah.
And so,
What do you
especially an
have?
old stone farmhouse like this. So in the winter, we shut down most of the rooms
Mhm.
and just kind of close them down. And then the ground floor, this is an old school farmhouse where it's a
Mhm.
3-story kind of rectangular squared off house, and
Mhm.
the ground floor was for the animals. So this was where, so we lived where the animals
You
lived. This is very fitting. And then the middle floor, the second floor, or whatever, how wherever you're from, whatever you call it, the next floor up,
Yeah,
um, was for the people who worked the land, and then the top floor was for the landowners. And so
right.
those two apartments on the top floor in our place have fireplaces and stuff, but we close those off because the ceilings are peaked and it's just so cold.
Cold, yeah.
But anyway, we use the ground floor where the kitchen is and the dining room and kind of a little sitting area. And so we resituate that and kind of get out all the dining room tables and resituate the couch and then bring a dog zone over for the dogs. And we just kind of
Yeah.
settle in to the ground floor. And we have a little cottage house right next to the house.
Mhm.
And for like, I don't know, probably nearly 15 years or something, we would just stay in the little cottage house and come over and cook and stuff in
Mm.
the big house. And
Mhm.
then, well, it took us, there's no, on the ground floor, there's no door. There's not a single door to close. So
Oh.
the first years, we only had an open fireplace to heat the ground floor.
Oh
And
my
so it was
goodness.
freezing.
Yeah,
So that's why we
yeah.
didn't spend a ton of time in there.
No way.
In our first winter, we had no idea what we were doing. We were suburb kids. We had no clue how to live in the countryside.
Yeah.
And we were burning wet wood. We were burning pine. And it was just like spitting out at us. We had no idea. So a few years ago, we ended up getting an insert, which changed our life.
Yeah.
And in that meantime, we also learned to like live like as if it was a castle or something where we'd actually, I say that really nice. It looked more like we were a butcher's shop with like heavy duty plastic hanging in like the
Yeah.
archway. These
Yeah.
beautiful, like, architectural things of the house. We're like, oh, we just have to hang plastic curtain over that to keep the heat in. And like, plastic
Well,
curtain in doorways and things, and then shove armoires in that doorway. We've learned how to like, really tighten up the house, but it's taken a long time.
yeah, it's something that most people probably are really surprised to hear. It is super hard to heat a farmhouse here
Oh,
I know we're in the Mediterranean, but man, it's cold in
well,
out in the
these old
country in the
houses,
wintertime.
once that cold sets in, it
Yeah.
sets in. And like you
Yeah.
said earlier, it could take almost a week to heat up the house.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's the thing. That it's just once you can get it warm and, learn how to circulate that air or
You
keep it
keep it
all
closed. Yeah, you don't go
closed
out, you
in.
close the door, you
Mhm.
never leave. Now what do you have GPL or is it just fire? How are you heating
So
your
we
house?
do have GPL and we do have we have radiators in all the
Mhm.
guest apartments,
Yeah.
and but we took them out from the ground floor because we didn't ever use them. And the radiators not only have the GPL, but then they have the solars that heat it, so that
Oh,
actually works really well in the fall
yeah.
for using the heat that way. But for us in the winter, we just use the fireplace, and so it
Wow.
means calculating how much wood do you need, and it's done by weight, not by whatever it is in the
Yeah.
States, I forget,
Yeah, I
cords.
remember. I don't remember. Yeah.
And uh, and then you've got to gets delivered and dumped, and you gotta stack it up, where
I
your big
hear ya.
wood pile is. Then you gotta haul it down to where your like secondary wood pile is closer to the house, and then you bring it in the winter. Then we have this section of like the entry that we just fill with wood. So there's like at least a week's worth of wood inside the house.
Yeah.
Gaji, the adopted papa, thought we were crazy. Like again, we live like animals, but it was like it's stupid to like let the air out all the time and only just bring
Yeah.
in a few pieces of wood. Are you kidding me? This is
Right,
a
right.
stone farmhouse, like load it up. What are we going to do?
Yeah.
It's just stone. It's
It's just
stone
stone.
walls. Yeah.
So do you love it still? I mean, do you think,
Oh
can
my
you
gosh,
see
I
yourself
totally
living
do.
anywhere else? Yeah. Yeah. Even in
Um,
all the, the quirkiness of it all, it's still perfect for you.
we throughout the years we've looked at different places and different properties and had different ideas of businesses, and then we just always come back to we love where we live. And
Yeah.
even with all of its faults, and living down a long white road, a dirt road where there's 5 comunes, 5 villages that own parts of the road, and within those 5 villages there's 2 regions, Umbria and La Marche, so no one ever fixed the whole road. They just
Yeah.
fix their little section if they do that. So just like the other day, having a neighbor come and knock on the door and have Jason help him fill the holes with gravel that was dumped along the road. And it's like, you could be like, goddamn road. But after
Yeah.
all these years, we realize, one, it keeps riffraff away. You got to
Right?
really want to come,
Who's going down
get
there?
totally, you got to really want to come to us so the right people show up. And 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 doing the thing, filling the holes with the neighbors have become like one of these winter traditions where we all go, this is such, BS, because it's just gonna felt like fill out when it rains too much. Like, this
Yeah.
is not a real solution, but it's better than nothing. And we all have killed the suspension of all of our vehicles, and
Right.
but
But it's the whole lifestyle, isn't it? I mean,
it
there's
is, but we
really,
love
yeah.
it. Like Jason was
Yeah.
saying, he goes like, I loved it. you know, because at first I was like, God, this isn't what I thought I'd do today. And then he was like 5 minutes in, he was like, it's great.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love listening to your stories and your life. I mean, I think it's just amazing. And I'm going to put inside the show notes, obviously, your links to La Tavola Marche, but also your podcast, the podcast from Italy, everyone. If you have not listened to it, you have to. It comes out, I think, the last Sunday of every single month? I think it's
That's
once a
what it
month.
should. We're
Yeah.
the inconsistent. It should be the podcast from Italy. Subtitle: The Inconsistent Podcast from Italy. We get so busy, and then
Yeah,
it's like, I don't know, but I
I
know
know.
it's we've got so many great stories to share, and it's a fun one. We always say the podcast listeners are also great guests. We have so many guests who have come from the podcast, which is so fun because
Oh,
they
good.
really
Yeah.
feel like they know us, and which is just hilarious. But it's where people honestly get the best, truest version of us,
Yeah.
where you put stuff up on videos and you got to make sure your hair looks okay, or like, you
Yeah, I
do
hear
the
you.
photos and you make sure that the light is just right. But when we do the podcast, it's just like, have a cup of, a cappuccino and hit record.
And just get
And
going. Yeah. And
yeah,
talk and tell us all about what you're doing. I love it. I'm a fan of your podcast, always have been, and all of the stuff that you do. All right. So listen, I'm going to let you go because you might need to put another log on the fire. It's getting late.
I think you're right. It's just about that time. It was a pleasure chatting this
Yeah.
evening.
Nice to talk to you too, and say hi to Jason, and you have a happy holidays, and we'll chat again soon.
Very good. All right. Ciao, ciao.
Well, that was fun. Doesn't Ashley have a ton of energy? I love talking to her. I really do. Now, her story is such an incredible reminder that dreams don't have to make sense to everyone. They just have to matter to you. And I love how her and her husband took what so many people might have thought was an impossible idea. I'm sure 17 years ago, they got a lot of pushback. But they turned it into this thriving and fulfilling life in the Italian countryside. And sure, there were challenges and there still are, but that's not, that's the thing about dreams. They're not meant to be super easy. They're meant to grow you, to stretch you, and to teach you what you're capable of. So if today's episode has got you thinking about your own big crazy dream, the New Year's coming, whether it's moving to Italy, starting a new career, or just taking a leap into the unknown, I want to hear about it. What's that dream you've been keeping tucked away? Head over to Instagram or right here in YouTube and let me know about it. Let's get the conversation started about how you can make it happen. And don't forget, if Italy is in that dream and you're considering moving here, we have a ton of resources on our website at smartmoveitaly.com that can help you navigate the process. Whether it's visas or property or just figuring out where to start, we've got you covered. It's time for listener questions. Just like the old radio call-in shows, my team has picked 3 listener questions, all left on our voicemail. I have no idea what these questions are, but I haven't been stumped yet. Are you ready? Let's get started.
Hello, Samantha. This is Maureen from Vancouver, Canada. I'm looking at a lot of different listings for properties, and they all have an energy rating at the bottom from A to G. And I can guess that A is the best and G is the worst. But what does that actually mean? If you buy an apartment in the center, in the historic center, and it's a level G for heating, does that mean you're never going to be warm and it's going to cost you a fortune? Just looking for some insight on what the meaning of those ratings is and what it actually practically means for when you're paying for heat and utilities. Thank you, Samantha.
Hello, Maureen. Great question. You probably see this. It looks like a little picture with a bar graph. We call it an APE, A-P-E. And this is an energy rating system that all properties have to have in Italy. As a matter of fact, you can't buy or rent a property unless the owner provides you with the APE, which is the energy rating of the property. And you'll notice that most of them are quite low, G's. And I mean, that's not uncommon to see something that low. You'll never really find a house with an A rating unless it's maybe, I don't even know about even a brand new build being an A rating. But, in that lower range, it's pretty normal in historical properties to be in that range because it isn't just one thing that they're rating. They're rating the whole property as a unit. And sometimes, yes, this could mean that there's some loss of heat or loss of energy in some way. Maybe it's the heating system. Maybe it's the windows. Maybe it's actually even the whole building might be on one heating system. So there's a lot of variables. But don't let the APE scare you, because it doesn't necessarily mean that the house has got, wind blowing through it if it's a really low rating. It just means that there's more to talk about and ask about with regards to the energy in the house. Now, you can increase the rating. It's not easy to increase the ratings, but there's a lot of homes with what might look like a low energy rating, but are very tight and definitely energy efficient to some degree in the winter time. So just make sure you check that. Heating systems can be vary depend on how you are heating the home. So it can be gas or forced air or a pellet. There's lots of different systems here. So all of those are questions in addition to the energy rating that you want to ask your agent about the efficiency of your home. Hope that helps.
Here is a question we received. I am bringing my dog to Italy. What is a pet passport and how can I get one?
Okay, so what is a pet passport? In Italy, actually all in Europe, all of your pets, your animals have to have their own little passport. So they can be, they'll come here and they will become Italian. They'll be first to get the passport probably beside you. But it's a little passport that you have to go to the actual health department, not your vet here in Italy, but the health department with proof of rabies shots and proof of ownership of the animal in order to get this little blue European pet passport. And you'll need this passport in order to travel by air to other Schengen countries, certainly to other countries as well. But specifically here in the Schengen, you'll need a pet passport if you're traveling by air. And they'll need to see that your animal has had rabies and that had those rabies shots at least 21 days from your travel time. Now, the pet passport, the important thing to think about is if you're new here, you've just moved, you need to register your animal, your pet, into the system, the ASLA system, the health system here in Italy, so that whatever region you're in, it has to be registered within that region that you're living in. And then after your registration has come through, and you need ownership documents and your address and residency and all of that. Once you have all of that and that's been registered, you paid a little, 25, 30 euros, then you can go to make an appointment through the health department and take your animal in, make sure they're microchipped. They will check that and give you the pet passport, and then you're good to travel. Now, if you're flying within Italy, don't worry about it. If you don't have a pet passport, that's fine. You can bring your animal with you. But if you're going outside of Italy, you absolutely need to have one. So give yourself some time to get this because, this is Italy. And it can take a while.
Kevin writes, how do I apply for my permesso di soggiorno and where do I do that?
Hi, Kevin. The permesso di soggiorno is the permit that you're applying for after you've arrived on your visa. You have 8 days to apply for this permesso di soggiorno, permit to stay or permit of stay. And you will make this application at the post office, your local post office. Actually, you can apply at any post office, but you should go to your local one. I always recommend as soon as you arrive in Italy, within the next day or so, go down to the post office and ask for a kit. It's actually just an envelope, but they call it a kit. And it has all of the application, the documents inside that you need to fill out in order to apply for your permesso di soggiorno. So just take the envelope. It's free. Just take it, go home, fill it all out, put all the documents that it asks you to put with it, which is typically the same documents that you used for your visa. Get a little tax stamp from the tobacco shop. And then head back to the post office, to the sportello window, which is just a special window at the post office, and you will apply for your permesso di soggiorno there. Just make sure that you do this within 8 days of your arrival. Well, that's all for this week's episode. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions about visas, citizenship, property, and really anything about moving to Italy that you would like me to answer in an upcoming episode, please feel free to send us a voicemail at our website at smartmoveitaly.com/podcast, or just click on the links in the show notes. Thanks again for listening, and remember, you can find all of the resources and the links to the people and the places that I mentioned in this episode inside the show notes. Ciao for now. A New Life in Italy podcast is a production of Sentire Media, created and hosted by me, Samantha Wilson. Production by London Nero, and with special thanks to Ali Frothingham, Sofia Pisana, and the entire team at Sentire. Follow A New Life in Italy wherever you get your podcasts. And hey, if you're thinking of moving to Italy, whether full-time, part-time, or for a lifetime, come and see me over at smartmoveitaly.com, and we'll help you get here and start living your best life. And don't forget, if you love this episode, please rate and leave a review. It's much appreciated. I can't wait to meet up with you again next week, same time, same place. Ciao for now.
Sentire Media.
Hey, podcast producers and show hosts. Do you want to join a podcast network that celebrates all things Italian? At Sentire Media, we understand the allure of Italy and its unique culture. Our devoted team of hosts and producers are all driven by their shared passion for Italy. And we work tirelessly to create the best lifestyle podcasts and content that will whisk you away to the very heart of Italy. With us, you can savor the mouth-watering flavors, get lost in the stories from the past, break down the cultural barriers, and truly immerse yourself in the vibrant traditions of this intoxicating country. If you have a great podcast idea or are already in production and would like to join Sentire Media, head over to sentiremedia.com, that's SENTIRE media.com, and find out how to submit your show.